This tutorial is going to be about working with Illustrator and Photoshop using textures and then bringing them into After Effects. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to jump to this image here. Now I need to put it onto layers, because as you can see it's all just one thing here at the moment. So with the text, if I want to be able to work with it individually, I need to go to the type and create outlines. I'm going to go ungroup, and then I have all these letters one by one. So what I'm going to do it nice and quickly, is I'm going to go Command X to cut, make a new layer, and then I just go make sure that I'm on that layer, then go Command F, and you'll see it come up on this new layer. Next one, Command X, click on that top one to make a new layer above it, Command F, and so I'll go along and I'll keep doing the same thing. Well, that was just a Command V. It's got to be Command F to paste it in the same place. Command X, up the top, new layer, Command F. Command X, up the top, new layer, Command F. These as well, I'm going to grab these two eyes, cut them, put them right up the top, new layer, Command F. Same with this. Now if I go Command Y, you'll see these are shapes and this one is just a line. So we'll see what happens, if anything, when we go into After Effects. Command X to cut it, new layer, Command F. And last but not least, this one and this one, because it's the only one left on that final layer, I'm just going to drag it up and pop it underneath the eyes and the mouth, but it's in front of the text. Now with this, File, Save As, and I'll just save it into the right file here. It's an Illustrator file. Save. Just go OK. Now the next one, if we have a look in Photoshop, I've got the same sort of thing. I've got the smiley face. I've swapped it around a wee bit, but this time it's got transparency. So I'm going to make a new layer above the head. All I'm going to do is I'm just going to bring in black paintbrush, except I'm going to make it soft. And I'm going to paint in a bit of a shadow. I know that I can hold down the Option key and clip it. I know that I can put it on multiply, and I can change the transparency right down. And I'm also going to go filter, noise, add noise, Gaussian, monochromatic, so it's a single color, and so I'm getting a bit of grain across that image. I'll go OK. Now with this, for the transparent background, I'm just going to delete out the white background. I don't need it anymore. File, Save As. I'll call this one Happy Grain. And it's a Photoshop file. Save. Great. Okay, now I'll jump into After Effects and we'll start to play around with things in here. So I'm going to make a new composition. I'm going to click on the preset. I'm going to go to HDTV 1080 24. 24 frames per second comes in. Down here it says the duration's 5 seconds, so I'm okay with that. And the background, I'll leave it on that at the moment. Okay, so let's see how things come in my project window. I'm going to bring in happy. So this is the Illustrator file. All acceptable files. I don't want footage. I'm going to say composition, retain layer sizes. I'll go open. And it comes. So what it does is it should give me a folder. This says all the individual items. And then it gives me a composition. If you just have the folder, click on that and make yourself a new composition. Because the new composition just means you can bring it in, drop it, and you're going to have one line that you can then open up to get to all the layers. With this, I just hold the shift key, pull on those corners to scale it a bit, and everything's looking pretty good. What you'll find from Illustrator, this is the odd thing, see how it's no longer black? It does this every time you bring something in from Illustrator. So if I wanted, oops. There we go, just moving that a bit. If I wanted to change this, so if I do it for the aha, I'll just find out where the last letter is. There we go. So grab all of these. I can control click on the name, and I'll have an option here that says create, and you can't quite see it, but there's an option here that says create shapes from vector layer, and then I can just command click on these Illustrator files and hit delete and get rid of them. What this means is with these ones here is I can actually go into the fill, and in this case I'll change it all to pink. So what you'll find is I've got happy open, that composition, but I've got comp 1, and that's where everything is placed inside here. So if I want to color those things, if I want these to be black, I've got to convert them into shapes. So let's have a look at our layer. So it should be exactly the same as what we've got. So the line hasn't changed, didn't need to be a shape. The eyes, because I put them both on the one layer, they're on the one layer. So everything kind of comes in as is. So let's see what happens with the Photoshop. Happy grain. I want to do the same thing. Composition, retain layers. Okay. Do I want, if it ever comes up with this and says, do I want to merge the layers? No. I always want to have them editable. And you can see the same thing here, a folder, and then I've got my comp. So I bring my comp in. Oh, much bigger than what I expected, so I'll just shift scale it down. And now if I have a look at that one, if I double click, we've got our yellow, and we've got these other layers here. What you'll notice with the yellow, because remember it's got that grain on it, it's brought it in as a pre-comp, and we can tell this by the color. So if I double click on this, it's going to give me one layer that's a yellow and the other one that is that grain. And I'll check that it's come through okay by going composition settings, and I'm just going to change the background off black so I can see everything. So it still comes in retaining that clipping. And you can see all these layers kind of come in here. Here's the comp with the original, and all these others are still open. I can close them just by hitting the cross, and it's not going to make any difference. So we've got all these things coming in the way we want them. Now, if I double click in the project window, now we're going to look at the bringing in the texture. So I've got an option here that's called grayscale. Now with this one, the image is really black and white. And so I'll bring this in. So this is just black and white. I can bring it in. And I can chuck it over the top of these other images. Now, the one that's underneath it is this Photoshop file. So remember, we have, if we're in this mode, we have toggles and switches. And if we click it, we have the ability to use these mattes. Now what you'll see is if I use the alpha matte, nothing happens. Why? Because it's got no transparency. It's just a black and white image. And it doesn't matter if that black and white image is RGB or grayscale, as long as it's black and white. But if it's a black and white image, I can use this option down here that's called Luma. So at the moment it's taking the dust and grain and it's doing the same thing as an alpha. If I swap it the other way around, it's starting to do the same thing. So let's have a look at a better example. So let's switch that off, and we'll do something like, let's say we want to have dust all over the screen. I go layer, new, solid, I'll make it black dust. So I'll bring in that, I put my dust layer above it, and now you'll see alpha's not doing anything. But if we go Luma, I have black dust everywhere. If I put it on Luma inverted, then you can see it's kind of cutting out the opposite, so I can see the image through the white portions. So if it's really strong black and white, we can use the Luma. Now I'll give you one more example. There's another option here that says texture. Just to, again, black and white image. I'll bring it in. And I'm going to do exactly the same thing. I'll just scale it a bit. As I'll go layer, new, solid, make a black solid, and I'll put that texture above it, and I'll do the same thing. I'll go Luma, and Luma inverted. This time what you'll see is that it's a bit faded. It's not a perfectly clean mask. And if I delete this one out, and I jump to Photoshop for a second, and I open that image up, it's because it's not a perfectly black and white image. So if I go Command L for the levels, if I make the blacks really black, the whites really white, I go OK. And I'll just save as. Just saving it as a JPEG. Now when I come back here, I'll do exactly the same thing. I'll bring in that texture 1. Drop it over the top and scale it. And we'll do the masking again, Luma inverted. We'll get the yellow, but we don't have that fade anymore. So the more black and white that image is, the better the control over this masking is going to become. Now I'll get rid of this stuff, get back here again. Now the next one is if I double click, I've got one that's called dust transparent. So this is one that's done in Photoshop. And if we close that and have a look, I've used the alpha channel, so you can see now that I've got black dust, but it's on a transparent background. So this gives me a kind of a double option. It means that I can bring it in here, dust transparent. Again, I can bring it in as composition, retain layer styles, editable. Probably don't need to so much, but I'll bring it in because it's just one layer. But if I bring it in, what you'll see now is I've got this dust. It's black and white, but let's say I want the dust to be white. I still have the option of going layer, new, solid, making a white solid. Oops. Put my dust transparent above it, and now I have that. I still have that option with the white solid to go alpha and make it transparent. So the alpha now is picking up on that background being transparent. So it means that this solid solid settings, if I change the color of it, change it to pink, you can see the color change in the background. Okay, so that alpha's given me that option. Invert, I can now see those colors, but through the holes. Now if I go Luma, it's not going to work because it's got that transparency. So if it doesn't have transparency, you want to try using Luma. If it does have transparency, then you can use the alpha. And the alpha, like a lot of things, gives you a bit more versatility. So we've got these kind of dusty scratches over the top. Oops. I'll just change that solid again. Back to black. And I'm just going to switch off the eye beside that for a minute. Now if I double click in here, I've got another image that's called seaweed. So I've got the grey and I've got the transparent. So we'll do the transparent first. So this is just adding texture on. Composition. I go OK, editable, And so it brings in this seaweed. So in this case, I'm going to go Happy Grain, open that up, and what will I look at? I'll look at the yellow background, so I'll open this up. I know my bottom one is the yellow, so I'm going to get seaweed. I'm going to go for transparent. So again, I've got this image here, and actually what I might do is I might start by putting it over the grain. Toggles and switches. Remember, it's got transparency. So I can look at attaching it to that using the alpha. So I've got my grain, and it's setting it out as a mask. Alpha inverted. Adding textures in. With this as well, let's try the Luma. Yep, nothing's happening because this one's got the transparency on it. Now, with the yellow one underneath, I'll bring in another one. Oh, actually, sorry, no seaweed transparent. I will bring in another one. Seaweed grey. So you can see now I don't have the opposition for composition coming up. Seaweed grey. Check that in. Going to make it a bit bigger. And this one, I'm going to put it down above the yellow. Now let's see what we can do with this. Alpha, it's not going to do anything. So we have to look at the Luma. Okay, Luma, because it's a black and white image, is going to let us play with those settings and add that option in. Now I'll go back to none, and I can get rid of that. Now all of these things as well. So if we're looking at the seaweed one, I've still got options like rotate. So put a keyframe in, move it a little bit. So within that grain texture, it's rotating. If I come back to my comp, I go in, just to bring in that timeline, we can see what's happening. So any textures that you bring in, you can manipulate them. You can play around with their movement separate to the image itself. So let's have a look at the other stuff we've got here. I'm going to show you one more option, and this is looking at the parenting. So if I double click in here, we've got all our layers. So this is our and everything from the beginning. So I'm going to go. I'll select all of these. I'll go P for position, because they're all selected, they all pop open. If I hit one keyframe, it selects them all. And while they're all selected, I'm going to jump them out. And I'll move a little bit. And then the first one, bring it in. Second one, little bit behind it, moving the playhead each time. Next one, again. Next one, a bit closer. Next one, really close. Didn't do a very good job of getting all my letters on the screen. But if I go N, let's play it. Again, can add in motion blur and all of that sort of stuff. So we'll look at one more. I'm going to, this one's a little bit different. I'm going to find the head, and I'm going to make this apparent. I'll just hit return. This is just so I can label these things. Close that. Next one is the eyes. So I click on the name, hit return. Eyes. Okay, and the last one's got to be the mouth. So the eyes, you can see there's an option here. If I click back the toggles and switches, that it says parent. So I can click on none, and I can say layer 3, the head. I can click on that, and so it basically says the eyes are connected to the head. The one above it, you also have a pickwick thing here as well. So I can click and drag that, drag it to eyes, and it says that is now parented to the eyes. So what this means, if I hit the head and I go P for position, I keyframe it, and oops, can't see, I want to move the playhead a little bit, move it, playhead a bit, move it, playhead a bit, and zap it off. And I can come in here and play with these Bezier handles if I want to try and make it all a bit smoother. So I can put on the motion beside all of those. All of them on the head. Now, what I can do is the eyes are following the head, but I can position them individually. So if I go P, and then I move it, and you'll see the mouth is following it as well, because the mouth is parented to this. Oops. So now when I play it, the eyes and the mouth are moving separately, but they're still parented. And again, same thing with the mouth. I can click on this. I can hit R for rotation. And as it moves here, I can rotate the mouth back the other way. Here I'll put the mouth back to 0, so it's back to normal. And so through this parenting, you can start to get a certain amount of complexity, one thing following another, but everything kind of working as an individual. Okay, we'll leave it there.